What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sweat, a little Friday edition of the show for you from home. Got a lot to get to today: baseball, football, and of course, the Women's World Cup. Got a lot to talk about. What we are going to start in MLB with DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne and Steve Buchanan. Fellas, thank you for being here. Lots of new starters for new teams going yesterday. Okay, so Lorenzen with 8 very solid innings for Philly. Scherzer, Flaherty going 6 and get the win. So we haven't seen like every guy that got traded go yet with their new team. But after a few days, letting these trades marinate, seeing what we're getting, any trades getting high marks from you, Garion?
I mean, it's hard not to look at what Jack Flaherty did yesterday and be impressed or be upset if you're a Cardinals fan or a Cardinals front office member or a Cardinals analytics guy. Like a lot of Cardinals stuff to be angry about. But, the results are one thing. 6 innings, 1 earned run. That's obviously fantastic. But the path he took to get there, pounding the strike zone, the velocity we saw on the fastball. He touched 97 yesterday, which was a season high. I believe the statistic is he had thrown 8 pitches with the Cardinals this season over 96 miles per hour, and he easily cleared that mark by the 3rd or 4th inning in his start yesterday against the Blue Jays. So when you look at that fastball velocity, when you look at the 19 whiffs he generated in that start against the Blue Jays, again, Jack Flaherty's had a very up and down season. He's had a couple stretches already, even with the Cardinals, where he looked like, hey, 2019 Jack Flaherty is back. So I don't want to get too crazy about one start. But when you only have one start to deal with, when that's your entire sample size, and the start looked that good, you have to be encouraged if you're the Baltimore Orioles.
All right, Steve, what do you think? Encouraged by any of these moves so far?
Yeah, I mean, 100% it has to be Jack Flaherty. I mean, this was the move that the Orioles had to go out and make if they are going to be legit contenders down the home stretch here of the 2023 MLB season. Like, I think we also forget, too, that, like, Flaherty is only 27 years old. It feels like he's been in the league for, like, 15 years, but this guy is still a few years away from being 30 years old, and I think he still has some time to kind of rejuvenate his career, and maybe he's going to get that with the Baltimore Orioles. But, yeah, I think that has to be the most encouraging spot that we saw here because, again, this was a move the Orioles had to make. Was this the most consistent guy that they go out there and get? Most likely not. But if we can get some of that old Jack Flaherty that we've seen in the past, this is going to end up being a massive move for the first place Baltimore Orioles.
All right, speaking of massive moves, 2 big series in the AL wildcard race going down. All right, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Astros, Yankees, all battling for the 2nd and 3rd wildcard spot. So Yankees get the win in the first of 4. Sox and Jays start tonight. Red Sox are -165 favorites to win the series on the DK Sportsbook. Jays are 2.5 games up. Astros 2 more games clear in the 2nd spot. Steve, is this like a make or break series for any of these teams? And is there a bet maybe that you like here?
Yeah, I don't think this is make or break just yet. Obviously, we're getting a little bit later into the season, but Red Sox and Blue Jays will see each other 3 more times after this 3-game series. So still got 6 games between those 2 teams. Red Sox are going to play a lot of AL East in the month of September. Of the 8 series that they see in that month, 6 of those series are going to be against AL East teams. So I think it's, we're not there yet, but obviously we're getting close. In terms of a bet, I do like the Red Sox on the run line tonight at +125. Obviously Alek Manoah is going for the Blue Jays. Hasn't looked as bad as we've seen before, but the bar was extremely low. It's just the walks are going to come back and kill him at some point. 12 walks through 18 and 2/3 innings in the month of July for Alek Manoah since being called back up. And then that's where it really starts to get messy for him. With men on base, he has a .378 WOBA with 10 of the 13 home runs that he's allowed on the year. So give me the Red Sox to win this game tonight by at least 2 runs.
All right, Gary, what do you think? Make or break for any of these teams? And do you have a bet that you like?
Probably not make or break. If you're the Yankees or the Red Sox and you're the teams playing catch up, like quote unquote catch up, there's still 2 months left in the season. Like, you don't want to be swept by the Blue Jays. You don't want to be 5 games back, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm backing Steve in his general direction on this Red Sox Blue Jays game tonight. And he mentioned Manoah's struggles with the strike zone. And that is actually my favorite bet. Is Alek Manoah over 2.5 walks. The over is +140. Despite the fact that Manoah has gone over this prop in 11 of his last 17 starts, He's also done it in 3 consecutive starts. He first came back from that extended stay in high A, looked great against the Tigers, but the control has just not been there the last 3 games. He's also specifically walking almost 16% of the left-handed batters he has faced so far this season. The Red Sox can put a bunch of left-handed bats in their lineup tonight. I expect we'll see at least 5, maybe 6 if Reese McGuire is behind the plate. And I have a feeling Alex Cora probably knows all these things about the left-handed struggles that Alek Manoah has had. So I'd be shocked if McGuire wasn't back there, making it a 6th left-handed bat. So give me the over 2.5 walks. The fact it's plus 140 is a gift.
All right, let's take a look at the slate as a whole. Gary, you got a hitter prop that you like for this evening?
Yeah, gonna go back to that same set of games, but let's talk about Yankees-Astros for a second. Luis Severino, kind of the Yankees version of Alek Manoah, a guy who was like a Cy Young caliber pitcher last season who is suddenly the worst pitcher in baseball, and it's really hard to figure out what's going on. But what we do know is Severino is also having his struggles with left-handed batters in particular. Lefties this season are hitting .360 with a .449 WOBA off of Luis Severino. And the Astros have some pretty good left-handed bats, in particular, Kyle Tucker, who I like to go over 2.5 hits, RBI, runs on this slate. That is at plus 120. Usually that prop is set at 1.5. Obviously, you're getting 2.5 with Tucker because of the spot, but Tucker has been so red hot, regardless of matchup. He's been arguably the hottest hitter in baseball since the All-Star break. He's got a 202 WRC plus in that span of time. You've got Yankee Stadium, that short porch for left-handed batters. I just think Tucker's in a fantastic spot in general. The fact that this prop again is at plus money really makes me like it.
All right, Steve, where are you going for your hitter prop?
You know, there are a million bets you could take on DraftKings Sportsbook, and somehow Gary and I landed on the same guy to talk about. I had Kyle Tucker over 1.5 bases at minus 105. Like, we're talking about close to even money here for somebody that has been doing that almost the entire second half of the season already. He talked about how lefties have been destroying Luis Severino. 449 WARBR against him, like he mentioned. 8 of the 15 home runs that he's allowed and a 6.97 FIP. Tucker is hitting .352 with a .460 WOBA in the second half of the season so far. And then when you talk about going over that 1.5 bases prop, since returning from the All-Star break, the Astros have played 18 games. He's gone over 1.5 bases in 11 of those games. He's been an absolute machine when it comes to this player prop. So give me that one there. Take Garyans too. The whole smorgasbord. Just go all in on Kyle Tucker here tonight.
All right, Steve, hopefully you guys have different players for your pitcher prop, or maybe you'll have the same one. I don't know. Who you going with?
Yeah, let's watch his reaction here. I had Luis Castillo to go over 7.5 strikeouts. Are we different?
We are, but I like that one.
Okay.
Right.
That's at plus 115. The Angels did a good job of adding some guys at the deadline. Should they been buyers? Probably not. But they did what they did, and now we're just going to roll with it. So they added some good bats, but they also added a lot of guys that are going to contribute to the high strikeout numbers that the Angels already have. Randall Grichuk is a high strikeout guy. CJ Cron is a high strikeout guy, about 22% on the year against righties. What really caught my attention, though, for the Angels, this team strikes out a ton against sliders, and that is the put-away pitch for Luis Castillo. The expected lineup for the Angels tonight have a combined 29% K rate against sliders on the season. So with someone like Luis Castillo, who starts ahead of the count more often than not, 53% of the batters that he faces, he starts that count ahead 0-1. I like this prop a lot for Luis Castillo to go get at least 8 strikeouts tonight at plus 115. Give me that one.
All right, Garian, we know you're going with someone else. So what is your favorite pitcher prop?
So I'm not usually a vibes guy. Like I'm pretty analytically oriented, but I'm going to go to the outs recorded market. Over 16.5 outs recorded for Dean Kremer. That is at plus 100 against the New York Mets. And look, I should have worn all black today to talk about the New York Mets, because if you watch the Mets play baseball, if you've watched them play baseball since the trade deadline, they think their season's dead, and it is. But man, that team is just, they look cooked. They look like they don't want to be there. I mean, you don't get swept by the Royals if you're still actively trying to win baseball games. And I just think you've got two teams trending in the opposite direction here. Kremer has gone over this prop in 10 of his last 16 starts. So it's not like there's not a lot of precedent here for him to do this. It's not like it's just based on vibes alone, but God, the Mets just don't look like they want to be on a baseball field right now. So I will take the Orioles pitcher to complete probably 6 innings tonight against the Mets.
All right, guys, how about your favorite game total? Gary, in which game are you looking for this one?
So going to go to Cleveland and Chicago. This total is set at 8.5. I'm going to take the under. These are just two of the worst offensive teams in baseball. They have been all season long, but the last 2 weeks in particular, you've got the White Sox bringing up the rear of baseball with a 69 WRC plus. In that same span of time, both of these teams rank bottom 5 in baseball in isolated power. And that's really the big statistic. They're going to need to string together 4, 5, 6 hits in an inning to really get some of those crooked numbers going, because these two teams they just don't hit home runs, particularly with Josh Naylor being unavailable for the Guardians most of the past week. Maybe he plays tonight, but still, even if he does, not overly confident in either of these two lineups. And the trends really do back it up. Cleveland is 44, 60, and 5 to the over this season, one of the worst marks in all of baseball. 8 of the last 9 times these two teams have met at Progressive Field, the game has gone under. So I expect those trends to continue. Low scoring game between the Sox and the Guardians.
All right, Steve, favorite game total, and are you going over or under?
I'm going to go under on another game total, Red Sox and Blue Jays at 10.5. This just feels a little too lofty for me. Like, I get Alek Manoah is pitching in this game, but on the other side, James Paxton has been phenomenal for the Red Sox this season. He continues to be in these games that have these high totals, and they just don't end up going over. I mean, you look at the last time he faced Toronto, shut them out through 7 2/3 innings while striking out 7. I mean, aside from 2 starts that he made against the Cubs and the Angels, where he gave up 6 and 5 runs respectively, he hasn't allowed more than 2 runs in 10 of the 13 starts that he's made. So there obviously is some concern here, because you think the Red Sox are going to probably beat up on Manoah, put up some big numbers there. What if they put up, 5 or 6 runs? But are the Blue Jays going to be able to make up the difference? And that's where I really kind of pause here. And especially when you take Bo Bichette out of the mix, who just recently went on the IL, I think with a knee issue it was. This is not a great hitting club against lefties. And then you take out one of your best hitters against lefties. So I just don't see where we're going to get 11 runs in this one, unless the Red Sox go absolutely bonkers against this Blue Jays bullpen as well. So seeing a total at 10.5, I think the under is a safer play in this one.
All right, Steve, take us home with your favorite game bet on the slate.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Cardinals to go over 5.5 runs against the Rockies at plus 100, even money here. I mean, the Rockies are starting Chris Flexen. As a Mariners guy, I've seen enough of Chris Flexen to know that, you know what, even a team like the Cardinals can probably put up some numbers against him. They've been boasting about how good Flexen has looked in the minors. Hooray, his career is rejuvenated. But then you look at the numbers he had in the majors, they were absolutely putrid. An 8.08 ERA, 6.73 expected ERA through 45 2/3 innings in the majors. Both sides of the plate are absolutely lighting him up. 339 WAR against lefties, 425 against righties. Look, the Cardinals are no offensive juggernaut anymore, but come on. Going up against Chris Flexen, yeah, give me 6 runs for the Cardinals at even money.
All right, Gary, and favorite game bet, what is it?
I mean, I just have to say, Steve waxing poetic about Chris Flexen, I have to take a moment to congratulate him that through the divine grace of the baseball gods, we get another Dallas Keuchel start this weekend. We thought it was over. We thought we could stop betting against Dallas Keuchel. It is back. That's going to be fun. Watch out for that this weekend. I'm going to go back to this Red Sox-Jays game. Steve already said he liked the run line. I'm just going to back it up. The run line for the Red Sox is my favorite game bet on this slate. It's plus 124. Just a lot of value here. The Red Sox are actually 7-0 their last 7 games against the American League East on the run line. They are 7-0 in general against the Blue Jays in 2023. James Paxton has been an absolute beast, pitching at Fenway, a 2.25 ERA that's backed up by a 2.70 FIP. And as Steve mentioned, Bo Bichette out of this lineup for the Blue Jays, currently on the 10-day IL. They have looked anemic offensively since he went down. everything just points in the direction of the Red Sox winning this game pretty handily, aside from Alek Manoah turning into last year's version of himself, which I don't see happening. So plus money on the Red Sox, take that when you can.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you for getting us ready for this evening's MLB slate. Steve, stick around. Need you for football next because we have been previewing the Week 1 DFS prices for NFL all week. So after Pierce joins us for a quick NASCAR price check, we'll get back into it.
Welcome to the Price Check. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries from Michigan. Whose salary jumped up this week? Bubba Wallace, $7,500 up to $8,800. He was the runner-up of Michigan last season, and the Toyotas have been very fast in the intermediate track package this season. Eric Jones, $6,300 up to $7,300. His hot streak came to an end last week with a non-top 20 at Richmond. Not sure he's worth this price at his home track in Michigan. Ryan Blaney, $9,000 up to $9,700. He won this race in 2021, but this is a different racing package. Whose salary dropped this week? Chase Briscoe, $7,100 down to $6,500. His average finish is 20th this season and just 5 top 10s in 22 races. Martin Truex Jr., $11,000 down to $10,500. The JGR Toyotas have been impressive, but Truex is 0 for 32 at Michigan. Christopher Bell, $10,200 down to $9,800. He's due. Has not earned a top 5 finish since his win in the Bristol Dirt Race back in April. Favorite play of the week, Kevin Harvick, $10,300. Happy Harvick is very happy in Michigan. He's won 6 of the last 8 Michigan races. Todd Gilliland, $5,300. He has a top 25 finish in 16 of the last 18 races with an average finish of 19th over that span. All right, guys, check out DK Network for your DFS information and needs. If you have NASCAR questions, find me on Twitter at Race for the Prize. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Catch me on DK Live.
To a Friday edition of The Sweat. Let's bring in our NFL panel. That would be DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, Steve Buchanan pulling double duty. He was just on our MLB panel. Now he is back. Guys, we're going to break down some of the salaries for the Week 1 NFL slate. But first, let's talk about the Hall of Fame game, okay? So, fourth quarter touchdown from the Browns crushed the hopes of all the unders bettors there. Mostly backups in this one, obviously. Mond and Wilson starting under center. Steve, was this game a throwaway for you? Did you have any takeaways other than they need to figure out how to keep the lights on?
I mean, look, you can't take too much into these games here. It was fun to, bet some preseason football there. If you're betting the under, I mean, come on now. What are we doing here? You should be betting the over in these preseason games. But, Zach Wilson was looking pretty solid there. I mean, look, there's not much you can take away from this. But I think it was just the overall sentiment. Nice to have some football back in our lives here, and we'll kind of take it from there. But no Aaron Rodgers, so there really was no appeal to this game to me personally.
Yeah, Jeff. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers-less Jets, not too exciting.
I mean, look, my bets went 2-0, so this was the most important game of the year. There will not be another important game after this. I mean, look, my only takeaway, I mean, it was nice to see some players out there. Nothing really spectacular. My only takeaway would be this. If the Cleveland Browns offensive line can make John Kelly look that good and they can keep both Kellen Mond and Thompson Robinson upright, I think Nick Chubb is going to be in for a big year. Like, that was my one takeaway. It's a weird takeaway maybe, but when you watch the whole game and there's nothing happening, you tend to just look at what's going on. The offensive line for Cleveland was really good. They have a good rookie in DeJuan Jones who looked really good in spots. I think Cleveland and I think Nick Chubb is in for a big year. I just like the way that unit looked for them. That's really my only technical takeaway. Otherwise, it was cool to see Thompson Robinson come back and, see a little points scored. But other than that, not huge takeaways. I mean, vanilla schemes, not much going on.
All right, guys, now let's talk about those Week 1 salaries for quarterbacks here. So we talked about the top of the price range previously, right? Jeff gave us value yesterday. Let's continue to break it down. Joe Burrow, okay, he's going to be $7,100. He's a little hobbled right now. So does the injury make him like an auto fade for you, Jeff? What do you think?
No, I mean, I think, again, it's Week 1, so we have extra time to just digest all this. Right now, the big red ugly Q tag is by Joe Burrow's name. Everyone knows he's got a calf injury. No human being on earth has ever recovered from a calf injury, in the history of the planet right now, right? So that's the big news. That's on everyone's minds. Also, he's playing the Cleveland Browns. So A team he has struggled against in the past, and they do have a good pass defense. And they certainly were a top 5 unit last year. So right now, Joe Burrow sets up as, I think he's just going to be an extremely low in play. I think he's kind of like the extreme GPP play. There is obviously some risk here. He could re-injure it. I don't really think that's going to be a big issue. We still got a month to go until the regular season kicks off. But, with the Browns narrative, with the injury narrative, I just can't see Joe Burrow's ownership getting up there. And you have to remember, the Bengals passed at one of the highest rates in the league last year. Every year that Joe Burrow has been in the league, they've passed more and more. They have 2 elite wide receivers. You don't really need to fear the matchups with this teams, and you should be trying to capitalize on. So I look at Joe Burrow as a fantastic risk-reward play for week 1. I think his ownership will stay low right up until the opening snap. If we get a sentiment change, we'll note it here on the show. But for right now, Joe Burrow's setting up as like a really nice just GPP stack with his wide receivers who are always in play for big games.
Steve, what do you think? Joe Burrow actually looking kind of enticing here?
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing in some of these large field tournaments, like Jeff was talking about, then that definitely is something to consider here. But other than that, like, there's no need to force it, at least at this point in time with Burrow, when you consider he's the 4th most expensive quarterback on this slate. It's not like this is a showdown slate where the options are extremely thin behind him. Like, we still have almost the entire field to go with after that. If you look right below Joe Burrow, too, and then we're talking about 2 guys that are within $400 in salary of Burrow, you have Justin Herbert and Tua, who are in one of the highest projected games on this slate at 50 points here. What are we going to end up seeing from Justin Herbert now that Lombardi is no longer the offensive coordinator? This is a team that wasn't throwing downfield much for Justin Herbert. Just 9.7% of the time he was throwing downfield. Are they going to unleash him a little bit more and see that cannon of an arm that he has against, to be fair, a tough secondary with the Dolphins team, but there's a lot to like about that game there. It gets away from the injury concern, saves you a little bit of salary. So I just don't think you need to force Burrow at this point in time.
Let's talk about some of these quarterbacks that are stepping into full-time roles for the first time this season. So Ritter in Atlanta, Jordan Love finally getting his chance in Green Bay, Washington putting their faith in Sam Howell. All of them priced under 6,000. So Steve, any chance we get like a huge game from any of them? They are all going against 3rd-ranked Ds from last year. Third.
Yeah, that's definitely some of the appeal here, going with that lower salary guys. And this is, one of the opportunities to maybe be early to the party than late when you consider how low their salary is. So, Jordan Love is probably the one that's going to catch a lot of people's attentions there, going up against this Bear team that, really needs to improve on their pass rush. Their cornerbacks were really putrid last year, nothing to really write home about. And, Love has looked good in camp thus far. You don't want to take too much stock into that, because every team wants to hype up all their guys and how good they look and how they're the next coming of God, it sounds like, when they're coming out of camp. But the offense that's going to be surrounding Jordan Love is a little bit questionable. Is Christian Watson going to be able to take that next step with him? What about Romeo Doubs? Is he going to be able to stay healthy and be there for Jordan Love? But at least the matchup on paper does bode well for Love thus far. So when you're talking about those 3 guys there in that 6K and under range, I think Love is the one that really kind of stands out the most.
Jeff, is Love the one that you would go with out of this crew of 3?
I would probably lean Sam Howell. I mean, look, the Jordan Love Christian Watson connection is definitely something you can roster. I think every week is going to have the potential to break out. I would just want to see, like as Steve mentioned, like where the ownership. If Watson and Love are going to be the highest owned sort of low price stack, I would probably fade them. The Chicago defense does project to be a lot better this year, but Sam Howell. I mean, Sam Howell ran like a 5-second 40-meter dash coming out of college. And I just don't know how that's possible, because he ran for over 800 yards and 11 touchdowns in his last year of college. This guy can move. He looks like a fullback, and you're getting a rushing quarterback at 4,900 against the Arizona Cardinals. Big things can happen here. He's got after the catch receivers in McLaurin and Jahan Dotson that could really just break things open for him. And again, he's only 4,900. He's the cheapest of the bunch. To me, Ritter would be a straight up fade just to how much the Falcons run the ball. That game's got a low point total, but again, Sam Howell, I think, is actually really intriguing. We'll see. The Cardinals will have to move the ball a bit, but they have some, again, if they can move the ball even just a little bit against Washington and just force Howell to keep throwing the ball late in that game, I think Howell with his rushing upside of 4,900 could be viable for week 1.
All right, how about a guy in a new team? So again, a lot of value for like Carr, Garoppolo, Mayfield. Any worth a sprinkle in a few lineups, maybe just for variation's sake, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, so again, we're talking about all these cheap quarterbacks. There's so much value in week one. I'm not sure how much you necessarily want to get exposure to these guys. Like for me, Jimmy Garoppolo would be a straight fade week one going into Denver. That's just too much risk. I don't even really hate Garoppolo that much this year, but Derek Carr, I think is definitely someone that you can look to pair with his receivers going up against the Titans. He's 5,300. I mentioned Chris Olave on the show yesterday. The Titans secondary was, from a fantasy points per game perspective, the worst in guarding wide receivers. They gave up a ton of points, receptions, touchdowns on go routes. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, both guys you can stack with Derek Carr. You can double stack them here, I think, with those two players and really go just for the big game here. So Derek Carr, 5,300, just with the matchup, I think is very much in play for week one.
Steve, what do you think?
I mean, we're talking about, the bottom of the barrel here. We're talking about these guys on their new teams. At least matchup wise, Baker Mayfield probably has the most attractive matchup of the three here going up against the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings were a team that was consistently involved in games that were going over here. Like Jeff mentioned, Garoppolo against Denver. That's not something I want to screw with in week one here. But, defending against the pass has not been a strong suit for the Vikings for a few years now. And if you look at some of the guys that you can pair Baker Mayfield with, like Mike Evans is 6,300, Chris Godwin is 5,900. That is obviously something that you can get for a cheaper stack and then kind of load up on some of these other guys at other positions in good matchups here. So Mayfield has the cast of characters surrounding him that can help him succeed. It's just, is Mayfield going to be able to essentially get out of his own way? Like, remember when he made those first couple starts for the Rams, look fantastic, and then he kind of just faded back to the Baker Mayfield that we all have known and loved, to play defenses against him or whatever. So again, it's not a lot of great options here, but I would guess Mayfield would be the guy. He supposedly has the track as the QB1 in this one over Kyle Trask, but they're having a lot of positive reports on Trask as in camp as of late too. So something to monitor, but at least as of right now, Mayfield probably has a more attractive matchup of those three guys.
All right, finally, guys, as of now, after one singular preseason game, I want your take. Who's going to be the slate breaker, highest scoring quarterback in the Millie Maker contest on week one, Steve?
Yeah, let's go a little Pierce Dietrich here. Let's go with Geno Smith going up against the Los Angeles Rams at 6,100. I mean, Smith really excels against zone coverage, and that's what the Rams really like to run here. Smith was 12th in yards per pass attempt against zone coverage last year. You look at that game in week 13 that he played against the Rams, had just under 28 DraftKings fantasy points, completed 71% of his pass attempts, 367 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. I mean, I think this is someone that Geno Smith, honestly, was somebody that was consistently overlooked. It felt like on some of these larger slates that you can go against. So I think that Geno Smith could end up being one of those surprise guys. Once again, very fairly priced too, 6,100. I think Smith could have a big game there in week one.
Jeff, you got a hot take too?
Yeah, no, after watching the Jets and Browns third stringers last night, I am definitely ready to declare victory for Justin Herbert in week one. I mean, especially with a month to go here and things can happen. But I mean, look, it's the highest point total on the slate. This isn't like a groundbreaking strategy here. Justin Herbert's going to be popular, but he's going to be popular for a reason. They're at home against the Dolphins secondary, not going to have Jalen Ramsey. Weren't that great last year anyways, don't have a big pass rush. I think this game is going to have a lot of points. And Justin Herbert with Kellen Moore, Quentin Johnston now added to the mix, I think it's going to be really hard to stop. This is just a player who can make all the throws. So really excited to see what that game just transpires with for week one. I think there could be a lot of fantasy points on both sides, but give me Herbert as the guy who could really break the slate.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you for helping us prep for our week one lineups there. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at tonight's MLB slate from a DFS perspective. Already covered the sportsbook side. That's coming up. All right, we've already looked at tonight's MLB slate from a sportsbook angle, but now we got to take a look at it from a DFS perspective. To do that, let's bring in DraftKings contributors Nick Fryer and RotoWire's Paul Bruno. Fellas, thank you for being here. Let's roll through this. Nick, I need a pitcher over 8K that's got to be in your lineup tonight.
Yeah, there are a couple guys that were on my radar for this one. Nothing overwhelming, though, in my book. I know Luis Castillo is probably the more consistent option, more reliable option. That's why he's the highest price guy on the slate tonight. And it helps, too, when you see the Angels have a 28% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching this month. But I'm actually going to go with Reed Detmers on the other side of this matchup. You look at what the Mariners are doing. They have a 28% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching over the last month. So the same number as the Angels, obviously, versus lefty rather than righty. And I know Detmers has been solid recently, but he hasn't really been popping off like he did. He had that 5 start run where he struck out, 43 batters over 31 and 2/3 innings. That said, over his last 4 starts, we've seen him pop off for 9 strikeouts a few times. Now seeing a Mariners lineup that is strikeout happy against left-handed pitching and has the lowest ISO against left-handed pitching over the last month and the second highest team BABIP against left-handed pitching over the last month. He's in a really safe spot tonight and a spot where he can get some strikeouts.
All right, Paul, which pricey pitcher over 8K is in a good spot?
Well, Jesse, I see a lot of pitchers with tough matchups tonight. There's one exception that jumps out at me, and I have had first row seats for James Paxton's no-hitter against the Blue Jays. And even earlier this season, he had an outstanding effort over 7 2/3 where he blanked them again on 3 hits. He just seems to get up for this team. He's a Canadian-born player. And that plays into the mindset that I have on this one. And you can include the fact that was discussed in an earlier segment that Jay's offense has been absolutely terrible of late. And I don't like their chances of turning things around in this scenario. And throw in the fact that Alek Manoah is throwing for the visitors tonight. And I just see a very high win probability for Paxton, who has been very consistent over his last 10 starts, allowing 3 runs or less in 9 of those outings.
All right, how about if we're looking for some value, a pitcher who's under 8K, Paul? Who would you go with?
I like Bobby Miller in this spot for $7,500 against the underachieving Padres. He's backed by the Dodgers offense, which is one of the best in the major leagues. And don't forget, the Dodgers came out of the trade deadline with an even stronger lineup, if you can imagine. And they got to be feeling really good about themselves in this clubhouse. Meanwhile, on the other hand, San Diego's been an underachieving club all season long. And even Yu Darvish has been rocked in several of his recent outings. He's the opposing hurler tonight. So I like the win probability for Miller and the Dodgers tonight.
All right, Nick, who you rolling with?
You know, I don't mean to copy Steve and Gary and what they were doing in the segment earlier, but Paul and I are in lockstep on this one. Bobby Miller is the guy to go with at 7.5K tonight against the Padres. You know, I looked at Clevenger as a possible option too, but he's facing a lineup that he just saw in his last outing, and it's well documented. I do not like taking pitchers in those spots. I know that the Padres aren't very strikeout happy against right-handed pitching, but you look at what Miller has done these last few starts where he saw the Mets and he saw the Rangers. He still averaged a strikeout per inning over those 2 starts. And I know the Mets have been terrible, but they still aren't strikeout happy against right-handed pitching. And I know with the Padres too, some people may be turned away because you look at their ISO against right-handed pitching over the last month, and they've been really good. And they've only had like a 245 BABIP too, which is insane. So the thing is though, they're not making a whole lot of hard contact, which is why I still like Miller, who also induces a lot of ground balls against the opposing lineups too. In this lineup, the Padres hitting a lot of fly balls right now, so they're due for some regression and hitting some into the ground.
All right, Nick, how about an infielder over 4,500 that you want to slot into your lineup? Who is it?
Yeah, Josh Jung at 4.7K going up against the Marlins. And I know you look at Jesus Luzardo, and it's not usually a guy that you want to target in any capacity with an opposing hitter, but Jung obviously does do well against left-handed pitching. 297 ISO, 337 average, 45% hard contact rate against left-handed pitching this season, and just a 39% ground ball rate. He hasn't had crazy power numbers over the last month against left-handed pitching, but he also has had limited opportunities. You look at Luzardo, the reason why I'm comfortable making this call is not just that Jung has put up good numbers against left-handed pitching over the course of the season and is due. You look at Luzardo, the contact numbers against right-handed pitching could help indicate Jung could go off tonight. 41% hard contact rate, 45.9% fly ball rate over the last 5 games. That's led to 2 home runs and 6 doubles. We could see some more of those from Jung tonight.
All right, Paul, which infielder over 4,500 has a favorable matchup?
I look at Bryce Harper, and, you might fade him if you're concerned about his power stroke this year, but consider this. This guy is still sporting very good numbers across the board, save for the home run slot, and he's facing a guy who's been absolutely terrible all season long in Jordan Lyles. He gets a platoon advantage against this guy who has an unsightly 2-12 record on the season, backed by a 6.15 ERA and in 128 12 innings pitched. So he's legit awful this season. Harper has a great chance to get off the home run tonight, though. I like this match, and it should be a great spot for him.
All right, Paul, what about an outfielder over 4,500? Who do you like in this spot?
I like Houston's Yordan Alvarez. He tops RotoWire's DFS game score predictions tonight, Jesse, with an expected 11.9 points. The case for him is at $6,000 is simple. A hot power bat against a struggling pitcher. I go for that matchup all the time in favor of the slugger. He enters play tonight on a 7-game hit streak, while Severino has had home run issues and been slaughtered in 3 of his last 5 starts. The guy has a terrible ERA, and it's legit based on the 12 starts that he has this season. So great matchup for Yordan Alvarez and possible Houston stack as well.
All right, Nick, who are you rolling with?
Well, you can go with a Philly stack tonight because Paul and I are of a similar mind. I'm just going to go with a different left-handed bat going up against Jordan Lyles. Kyle Schwarber at 4.6K. And I know the 180 hitter, that's not exactly terrifying, but we know he can go off against right-handed pitching and still provides a ton of power. Hasn't hit a home run since July 28th, and since July 19th, he only has 1 home run. But before that July 19th game, he had 4 consecutive games with a home run, and still over his last month of games against right-handed pitching, he's got a 37% hard contact rate, and he's only he only has a 33.9% ground ball rate. Going up against Jordan Lyles, right? He's due to break out in general. Lyles can help with that too. 13 of the 22 home runs he's given up this season have been to left-handed bats, and that's been a big reason for that has been they have a 47% fly ball rate against them. So I love Schwarber in the spot to break out tonight.
All right, Nick, how about a value hitter, someone who's like under 3,500 that you could slot in here?
So I actually went just a little over 3,500.
Oh.
I know. Sorry.
Okay.
You know, maybe I may have misread the rules, but either way, 3.6K, still right there, Jesse. And it is for a Astro stack against Severino tonight. And it's a guy who I think you could easily skim past in Jose Abreu. Hasn't done much against right-handed pitching this season. You look recently to it, doesn't put up crazy numbers, maybe a little bit better than his season-long numbers, but I like the matchup for him tonight. He's seen Severino 17 times, 17 career plate appearances, hasn't taken him deep, but he does have 3 doubles overall. He has 7 hits against Severino, so clearly sees the ball well. Severino, I know he generates a decent amount of ground balls against right-handed hitters. That can be a problem for Abreu, but I'd rather take that and then look at their history. I give that advantage to Abreu. And then also Severino only has a 16.7% strikeout rate against right-handed hitters over his last 5 starts. So we should have a lot of bad ball events.
All right, Paul, did you identify a hitter under 3,500? What do you think?
Yes, I did. I followed the instructions for once. And I do have somebody. But look, I got a good look at this guy because the Orioles just rolled through town here in Toronto, and they looked great. Does everybody realize that the second best win percentage in the majors right now? Amazing. And one of the guys who caught my eye is Jordan Westburg, hitting in the 6th spot for them. There always seem to be runners on base for this guy. I mean, they averaged 12 hits in the series per game, and Westburg was a big part of that. He's been on a nice roll of late. I like his chances to continue that productivity. Again, priced at only $2,900 against the Mets squad that seems to have thrown in the towel. The white flag of surrender was up in their dugout, I think, following a sell-off at the trade deadline. So they're ripe to be rolled over, just like the Jays were by that Orioles juggernaut. And Westburg should continue to play a factor in the heart of that lineup.
Paul, Nick, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys being here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We have one more break and one more block to go. We are talking Women's World Cup with AJ Scholes when we return. Welcome back to The Sweat. It is time for us to get into Women's World Cup action. Nobody better to do it with than RotoWire's AJ Scholes. He is here. AJ, Yesterday, you said you're putting your money on Sweden for a little bit of an emotional hedge here. Okay, but let's dive into this game. Where are you looking for a goal total? Okay, because over 2.5 goals, it does have some value at plus 130. So are we possibly looking for maybe a breakout for some U.S. goals, or is this going to be another low-scoring nail-biter?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people suggesting targeting the under 1.5, even that it could be really low. But I think a 2-1 game is probably more likely here. So I do like taking that over. Obviously, the danger is that it goes 1-1 and it's decided in extra time or penalties, which of course isn't going to pay out on the DK Sportsbook. So if you want to hedge away from that possibility, I think you could just go with both teams to score. Comes in at plus 100 value, a really good spot there. But I do like the over. I think 2-1 is not an unreasonable scoreline in this game.
All right, how about a goal scorer prop here? Alex Morgan has been shut out thus far, which actually isn't saying much because only Horan and Smith have scored the 4 goals for the U.S. Sweden has 3 players with multiple goals in this tournament. So what's a goal bet that you like?
Yeah, I think I'm going to stay away from Alex Morgan. I just don't know what's going on there. She's had a ton of shots on goal, but hasn't been able to score. I think I'd rather go with Sophie Smith. You get slightly better value at plus 210. And she should continue to be the driver for the USA. On the other side, Stinia Blackstenius for the other side here. She scored against Italy. I bet her to score in that one, so that paid off for me there. She got rested the last game, so she's coming into this one fresh, and I think should be back in the starting 11 and is a good option to score for Sweden here.
Are there any other game or team props that you like for this one? I guess you could go for either side here.
Yeah, I know I said I prefer Smith to score a goal, but I do like Alex Morgan's shot prop here. 4 or more shots comes in at plus 110. Now, these are just shots, not shots on target, but she's been averaging 4.7 per game. I think you could also look at Amanda Ilstad to have 1 or more shot on target. Comes in at plus 110. She's got 5 shots on target through the 3 group stage matches. So there are some spots with these shot props that you can target.
All right, what's your favorite bet for this one? You just taking Sweden again?
I know. I do think that is my favorite bet here. They're plus 260. The value's so good. I'm just not feeling confident about a USA win here. If you're worried about the extra time possibility, you could go Sweden just to advance, comes in at plus 135, still pretty good value there. So I have to, I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But my betting angles here is just, it seems like it's Sweden's game to win.
All right, well, 3 games on Saturday. So what's a bet you like in these matchups? Japan-Norway would be the US's next matchup if they win, whoever takes that one.
Well, I mentioned this one yesterday, but now we actually have some numbers behind it. Jill Roord comes in at plus 120 to score a goal, which I think is tremendous value. She's got 3 goals in the group stage. You could even double down on that, take her minus 125 to have 2 or more shots on target, which she's perfectly average throughout the tournament here. I think you can get really good value out of this team. It should be a one-sided matchup. So Jill Roord, you could even consider 3 or more shots on target, which comes in at plus 225, which is, a fantastic spot. You're banking a little more on it being, one-sided. This is going to be a tougher game, I think, than some of their other ones. But I like Jill Roord's numbers here.
All right, finally, how about a bet for those games on Monday morning?
Well, it's really hard not to be on the Lauren James train for England, and I think I'm going to keep riding that one. She's plus 185 to score, which I think, in my opinion, is just way too high. When I first opened up the DK Sportsbook, I was expecting her to come in 135, 140, something like that. So getting the value, she was really dominant in the last game. And while Nigeria should offer more competition than China did, England should be on the offensive forefront throughout this game. And I really think they are going to bring it to them. And I think Lauren James will be a key part of that.
All right, AJ, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We will check in with you next week and see how all these bets played out, because that is a show. Madden begins at noon. Thank you for joining us for this remote edition of The Sweat, and we will see you on Monday.